Welcome to the Ian Bousfield Experience. I'm glad you're here. This series of podcasts are just things that come up in my mind when I'm thinking about playing, when I'm thinking about teaching, and general thoughts about music. There are some things here that I hope you'll find really useful. And don't forget, if you've got any comments or if there's anything you want to discuss further, go to ianbousfield.com. Welcome to my Desert Island Discs, Part 2. I have to confess that I've had a little bit of difficulty justifying doing this podcast at this time, because it seems that at the beginning of June 2020, our world is burning. There are massive disputes in the UK, in the US. Sorry, I said the UK first because it can't help it. I'm English, for better or worse. And it just seemed so trifling for me to talk about music at this time. But then it occurs to me that what we do, music, is part of the cure. And we need to be on the front line working for change and for a better world. And so I hope that doesn't sound too political, but that was it. I did have to rack my brains for quite a long time and contemplate a long time before I felt it was worth doing this. And that was my reason, because the way forwards is through love, and love of music, and love of each other. And I hope that you will feel my love of music through in this second part of my Desert Island Discs. My next disc, or my next artist, is Alfred Cortot, the legendary pianist. If you've never listened to him, please do. Just to refresh things, before I did this podcast, I just put some Chopin etudes on. You can find it on YouTube. And I have to confess that I got a tear in my eye. It's the essence. If I'm sitting on my desert island, I could put that on and within 4 measures be reminded of the essence of music, what this is all about, why we do what we do. It's music from another age. It's the real thing. It's the real deal. It's what it always used to be. And it's really quite interesting, because you'll hear wrong notes. He plays wrong notes. Sometimes it sounds like he's doing the Star Trek or the Spock Live Long and Prosper, and someone's tied 2 of his fingers together. But the essence, the love of life, the love of music, the expression is just extraordinary. And it's what's missing in our world of music. You know, as Shostakovich said, there is no beauty in perfection. And, you know, that other great quote, never forget that musicality is a technical weakness. And I think we are guilty of that. And we can have a rethink about that. Have a listen to Alfred Cortot. If I was on my desert island, I would be. Now, I think also partly where we have over the years misunderstood things is this thing called rubato. Because if you listen to him, he's going all over the place. He has himself on a very long leash, rhythmically, and as far as the timing of things is concerned. However, listen again, because everything he does is grounded, rooted in a metronomic tempo. And even when he moves away from that, he knows exactly where the beat is, and you can tell, you can hear it. So you have the stability of the rhythmic flow, followed by this incredible command of freedom on top of it. So that would be my next disc. Find something. He does a lot of Debussy preludes. There's Chopin. Chopin is really, really beautiful. I still think probably the greatest. So that's the next one. The Debussy piano preludes, performed by Arturo Benedetti Michelangeli, forms an important part in my musical life, because it's, having said there is no beauty in perfection, this might be the one that breaks the rule. He's the opposite of Cortot. Cortot, by the way, did signal him as being the next big thing. When you listen to that recording, as I just have done, again, moved to tears. It's spiritually beautiful and perfect, and he was really his attention to detail was extraordinary. I did do a couple of concerts with him when I was in the London Symphony, but I don't think he was ever at his best playing concertos with orchestra. I think in recitals, I think he was one of the greatest recital pianists. And again, if you've never listened to these recordings, you should. That would just immediately transport me to another world. And it's interesting. I have an interesting story in the connection of Cortot to Michelangelo to Pollini. Maurizio Pollini, who is one of the greatest pianists of our time, and also very famous for his Debussy performances, was a student of Michelangelo, and very reminiscent of the way he played. I once was in the Salzburg Festival, because when we were in the Vienna Philharmonic, we were located in Salzburg for the whole of the summer, and usually this bloody dirty big cloud came and sat over us and whittled on us for 6 weeks, and there was, I can't remember which summer it was, bloody snowed, and then so you'd endure 3 weeks of rain and 12 degrees, and then the sun would come out. It'd go brutally Mediterranean hot, and that everything would be steaming for 3 days, and then it'd go back to raining again. I loved the concerts, but I actually have to say I didn't come to terms with the rain and all of the tourists. Anyway, so we had our own rooms and a locker downstairs. It was not glamorous by any means, let me tell you. And I used to, you finish a rehearsal and you stay and do a bit of practice, as one does. The loudspeaker in the concert hall was going on. You could hear, oh, the audience is coming in. I wonder what the concert is tonight. Because it was like a railway station with great artists and orchestras from all over the world coming through. And so I thought, oh, I'll go upstairs, side of the stage, see what it is. And they created like a stage within a stage in the Großes Festspielhaus there. And it was a piano recital by Maurizio Pollini, I discovered. And the piano was kind of like enveloped in this curtain. So he was sitting down with a curtain literally, I don't know, 0.5 meter, 2 feet, whatever, a meter behind him. And so I just walked onto the stage and stood behind him as he started playing. I was literally with him on the stage. And I got to stand literally with this guy as he was giving a concert to, I don't know how many people fit in that whole tour, 1,000, 1,200, whatever. And it was absolutely extraordinary. Then I saw a man with a uniform approaching, and I thought, okay, that's it. That's the end of this. Time to go. And then I noticed he was carrying a chair. And one of the security guards thought, well, if you're going to listen to the concert, you don't want to stand for 2 hours, so here's a chair. I sat and listened to the concert, and it was absolutely bloody mind-blowing. And it is reminiscent of what Michelangelo did. And the ability to turn a piano into a harp, the ability to turn a piano into a glockenspiel, the ability to smudge over colours and create pictures was absolutely extraordinary, and all done with this immense sense of spirituality, and projecting that out into the audience was extraordinary. I would have loved to have repeated that experience with Michelangelo, but he didn't like doing concerts, actually. Good for these days, I suppose. He wouldn't be missing out, would he? But that would definitely also be there. Michelangelo with the Deutsche Grammophon recording of the Debussy Preludes. There's a wonderful T-shirt that I think the members of the Los Angeles Opera one time had printed up. And it says, life is short, opera is long. I really wish I had one. I'd love one of those. Certainly all of those years that I was in Vienna, I would have loved one of those. When I went to the Vienna Philharmonic, I didn't understand opera and just thought it was a load of nonsense. And realized very quickly that it was another area of my life where I was proving what an idiot I was, because I immediately fell head over heels in love. The pit, the opera pit in Vienna, is open for those of you who haven't been there. That means there's a stage, and then in front of the stage there's an orchestra at a lower level. I don't know, 8, 10 feet. What's that in meters? 2, 3 meters? 3 meters? No, not 3 meters. A little bit lower. In fact, in some performances, it's like the top of the double basses were almost poking over the top of the stage. So it was about, of the singer stage. So it was about that size. And as you know, the Vienna Philharmonic, the Vienna State Opera, which was our main employer. A lot of people don't realize that, but my contract was with the Vienna State Opera, not with the Vienna Philharmonic. Sort of like the Vienna Philharmonic is the little bit of fun on the side from the Vienna State Opera. That's how it always was. When it was the Hofoper in the 1860s, 1880s, that they got together and did concerts on Saturday and Saturday afternoon, Sunday morning, just for a bit of a break from playing opera the whole time. And I wander, I know, but it's entertaining sometimes. And that's how it still is. The season concerts in the Vienna Philharmonic are Saturday afternoon, Sunday morning, so it doesn't interfere with the opera schedule. And so I was immediately in September 2000, when did I start in Vienna? 2000, I think it was. Yeah, in September 2000, thrown into the deep end of sight reading, I think 64 operas in my first season, because they don't rehearse, or certainly back then didn't rehearse much. I think I played the Ring Cycle 6 times before I actually rehearsed it. And that's okay, because the opera, as someone once said to me, is a 4/4 opera. If you can read music and count, you're okay. And if it says fortissimo, play loud. If it says pianissimo, play quietly. You know, it kind of works. And if you have an idea of the style, and of course you're going with this huge avalanche of style, tradition, and musicality going on all around you, it's fine. One of my collector's items, I guess, as a musician, and this is not one of my selected discs, but just out of interest, on Christmas Day, on December 25th, 2000, I sight read Die Frauene Schatten by Richard Strauss, which is, along with Wozzeck, probably the most difficult first trombone part in any of the operas. And it's long, and I sight read it, and Simone Young was conducting, and I really, that was one of the moments I built up to. It was like a real test for musicians. Can you react to what's going on around you? Can you, I mean, I wasn't sight reading it. I'd got the part and I'd looked at it and I'd asked a few of the colleagues and they'd said, oh, watch out for this bit or this bit. You're on your own here. Because let's not forget, when I first went to Vienna, I'm sight reading all of these operas. If I picked my trombone up to play and nobody else did, that either meant I had a solo or I was in the wrong place. And it was a bit scary sometimes. But that's an aside, isn't it? Die Frauene Schatten, the collector's item. Anyway, I sat there night after night sometimes. The first thing that strikes you is the genius of Richard Strauss and of Puccini. Unbelievable, those Strauss operas, goodness me. Just extraordinary. Arabella, incredible. Anyway, so I very rapidly got used to sitting there night after night after night for a long time, and grew to love it, and grew to love watching the rawness of operatic performance, what it is to stand there without an instrument, naked. No, I'm not talking about Salome. Salome. I mean, literally, you have no instrument in your hand. You don't have a piano to lean on, and it's just you. And to feel that atmosphere close up is extraordinary. A couple of years after I left the Vienna Philharmonic, I was coaching the Gustav Mahler Youth Orchestra, my beloved Gustav Mahler Youth Orchestra. I am a musical child of Claudio Abbado. I first left the UK when I was 16, first time I ever left the country. I had to get a passport and went to Palermo for a month with the European Youth Orchestra, or it was European Communities Youth Orchestra it was called then. And I came from the north of England. Everyone said, English food, English wine, well, not English wine, you know what I mean? English culture, everything, English beer, the best. Foreign rubbish, load of muck. And I went to Palermo and the sun was shining and the food was bloody amazing. I thought, I like this. And I will still never forget the smell of the cafe bar at the side of the opera house in Palermo when I was 16, smelling the coffee and the croissants and it was it was April. There were flowers in bloom, the blossom. It's like, by hell, I wouldn't mind some of this. I think I'm going to live outside of the UK. And it was that moment that actually made me say, you know what? I think I might try a life outside of the UK at some point. So I'm a child of the European Youth Orchestra and of Claudio Abbado musically in many ways, and I owe him an awful lot, even though he was a very difficult man to work for. And I've become a coach of another one of his musical children, the Gustav Mahler Youth Orchestra. I love it. It's something I always look forward to every year, and long may it continue in these difficult times. And after a couple of years, I coached there, and I was with Werner Hink, the former concertmaster of the Vienna Philharmonic, and we were listening to the first concert, and the Karfreitagszauber from Parsifal was in the program, and I was sitting next to him, and he said, come on, don't you miss the orchestra? Don't you want to go back? Come on, you could still go back, Are you sure? You don't want to go back to your old job? Because my job was open for a long time. I said, no, I'm very happy with my life in Switzerland, and this is great. I'm very happy with the life move that I've made. I love the orchestra, and it's still very much in my heart, and all the music is still there. But I've kind of done that. And the orchestra started playing the Wagner, the Karfreitagszauber, and I burst into tears. And he's sitting next to me, just looked at me, and he went, you don't miss it, huh? And that opera is very special to me for several reasons. One of which was that it always was played at Easter, for obvious reasons. It's the Easter opera. My colleague in Vienna never wanted to play it. In fact, I'm a bit of a statistician. I like counting. And I have the figures that in my 12 years in Vienna, I played Parsifal 34 times and he played it 4 times. And at first it was a bit of a chore. It's a bit nasty. There's lots of quiet entries. You just sort of like wait there for 20 minutes and then come in with a very important and nasty quiet chord. And if you've just been away playing recitals, your lips are not exactly in shape to do that. But in the end, Parsifal has become a kind of obsession for me. Not enough to get me back to church, but it is an obsession. And I still cannot listen to the Karfreitag music and keep a dry eye. There's something about that. I think that opera, even if you leave out any of the storylines, if you just listen to it for what it is, I think you're aware we are listening to the ultimate in our art form. And that I would take to my Desert Island disc, and to my Desert Island, and it's the only one, I think, on which I am playing. I would take the version with Christian Thielemann that we did in 2005. In June 2005, if memory serves. I have a strange memory. And what I find really amazing is it's a live recording. I don't think there's any applause. I think they've cut the applause out. I always find it really interesting when people talk about the legendary Wagner recordings, like the one from the Met with James Levine, which was done with goodness, 300 rehearsals over bloody 15 years or something. The Christian Thielemann Ring Cycle recording, to which many other recordings are compared, that was done in 2011, I think, one of the last things I did in Vienna. We had a 3-hour rehearsal for each of the operas. Think about that. Götterdämmerung is 5.5 hours. We had a 3-hour rehearsal on it. And then it was recorded. And that was it. And that recording stands comparison with any other Ring Cycle recording out there. And yes, it's not perfect. If you compare the beginning, the opening chords of Götterdämmerung on that recording to others, yes, the Vienna Philharmonic one is out of tune, no question. But that's one take, and there's this really difficult issue that you can't get around in Vienna, and that is that the brass section sits on one side, blowing into the orchestra, and the woodwinds and horn sits on the other side of the orchestra, blowing into the orchestra, and the strings are in this sandwich in the middle. And that means that when you hit the chord, the beginning of Götterdämmerung, you can see through the orchestra, you know, red-faced horn players. They're obviously playing loud, but you can't hear anything at all. So you don't know whether it's together or in tune. You have no idea. So only on a recording like that, you'll find out, that's not quite right. But other than that, I would say that Ring Cycle recording bears comparison to anything. I also, in that Ring Cycle recording, made a mistake. I don't mind telling it. I love conductors, and I love Christian Thielemann. He's extraordinary. And I don't know why. Maybe I was a bit grumpy. And in the middle of, I can't remember which one of the operas it was. It might have been Götterdämmerung. I glared at him for something. Probably he put his hand up at me or something. And I glared. Oh boy, do I regret having done that. He was the only conductor in my time where I confronted, and I didn't do it very often, where I confronted him. I thought, boy, that was a mistake. Because it was like, you know, no, that's not a glare. This is a glare. He glared back at me and I just thought, oh, I'm sorry. Anyway, back to my Desert Island Disc of Parsifal. It's also a live recording with Christian Thielemann. And it will, apart from the Karfreitag music, it will always remind me of the end of the second act with Waltraud Meyer. And I saw her do this live, where the Vienna Philharmonic string section stokes it up and up and up, and the dynamic goes, and they're playing these tremolandos, and the whole building is vibrating and resonating. And then this human takes a breath and comes in on a note and just divides the orchestra in two. It's like the parting of the sea. How she got that, and yet at the same time with a sound quality like your mother singing to you when you were a baby. Incredible. And I guess experiencing something like that live is what converts you to opera. I've talked about this one rather a lot. Just out of interest, my Desert Island Discs of Operas, if I was to say, well, which were the operas that are in my top 10, I don't know if it's 10 or top whatever, Tristan, Parsifal, Wozzeck, Lulu, Die Frau ohne Schatten, Rosenkavalier, Othello, Don Carlos, and Die Tote Stadt by Korngold. So it's my top 8. They're the ones. Oh, and Don Giovanni. Sorry, that's 9. No, that's 10. Sorry, 10. My top 10. There you go. Don Giovanni. He's in there as well. So that's Parsifal. Deutsche Grammophon, Christian Thielemann, Vienna Philharmonic. I was once described by a very great conductor as a walking contradiction because you never know quite what was going to happen next. Windmills of Your Mind, on the original recording, Michel Legrand, sung by Noel Harrison. I guess that reflects a part of my personality, which is why I liked Vienna so much, which is the one side of your face smiling, the other side of your face crying. It's a little bit of a resigned, yeah. Life's just like that, isn't it? Songs, but it really puts me in a deeper place. And I've often thought it's amazing. Noel Harrison was like a session singer at the time, and he was just engaged to sing a song in Paris for Michel Legrand. He didn't know, he got the music, looked at it, he sung it, listened to the recording. That was the first time that had ever happened. Isn't that amazing? To think that song had never existed before before then. And there it is, encapsulated kind of on YouTube. I love it. It's there. Now, luxury items on my desert island. Well, food and drink is going to come as no surprise to you, is it? Wine. Probably a Nuits Saint-Georges Premier Cru. From not a great year, from a pleasant year. Like 2000, 2007. 97 is probably getting a bit old now, as is 92, but 2007, they're in beautiful shape, and they remind you of the depth and the terroir and the depth of life, but also the great joy of life. And so that would be my wine. Food. So when we did some videos for the Aries Quartet, this, as far as I'm aware, this video was never released, and we were sitting down and we were asked, what's your favorite food? And it's kind of like spaghetti bolognese, mac and cheese. Yeah, I like mac and cheese too, says someone. I said, yeah, it's sort of, very lightly roasted pigeon from Bresse in France. And everyone in the room just sort of looked around at me. It's like, no, we can't use that. But that is the most incredible taste I think I've ever had that would go with that wine. Pigeonneau de Bresse, sort of like roasted rare with that bottle of Nuits Saint-Georges Premier Cru, probably from 2007, maybe from J.J. Conferon. I think that's what you call a first world desert island disc, isn't it? Sorry. There's a whole other world in my life that you're maybe not aware of. Maybe I should do a wine podcast. Anyway, and keep that off this one. My last desert island disc, probably, I think it may be the most requested disc on Desert Island Discs. I don't know. But it's Louis Armstrong, Wonderful World. And I find it quite emotional even just to mention this because it reminds me of my father. It's a soundtrack to my youth. We didn't have the record, but every time it came on the radio, my dad would turn it up. And he would give my brother and I a lecture on humanity. The older I get, I don't know where my father bloody came from. He was a refugee. He was bombed out of his house 3 times in the Second World War in Hull and got refugee to York. And even now, his twin brother, he's stopped on the street by people who said, thank you for what you did for me. You turned my life around. And my uncle has to say, well, I think you've got the wrong guy. Unfortunately, my brother is no longer with us. And my dad was my teacher when I was a kid, one of my teachers. He was, I think I've said this on another podcast, he was bloody terrible. Bless you. He used to explain something to you, And if you didn't get it, he'd say it to you again. And then he'd keep saying it to you again, and you probably still wouldn't get it. But what he did was he instilled in me and in others the belief that they could do anything. And in some cases, those others are now millionaires because he inspired them not as musicians. But he could convince you that you could do anything. And even now, at the age of 56, the inner strength and the self-esteem, the unshakable self-esteem that I have, I can only put down to that. And I only sadly realized that after he had died, what he'd actually done for me. So that's a bit of an aside, but this song would remind me of him. And when I say, I don't know where he came from, we came from a very ordinary background in the north of England. And there was a series on the television called The World at War. And when I was 7, 8 years old, it was scary. He made me watch it. And he said, you make sure that this never happens again. And you make sure that what happened to those Jewish people can never happen to anybody else in your lifetime. Human beings forget very quickly. And so you can imagine the discussion with Louis Armstrong. Louis Armstrong was my father was a jazz trumpet player, amateur. And Louis Armstrong was his absolute hero. He absolutely worshipped him and would tell me, you know, the tragedy of Louis Armstrong's life every time he heard it. You know, like, how could you look at that, how someone could be treated like that, you know? And so this song would remind me of it. And it occurs to me now that perhaps that's where my personality was developed, in watching The World at War and listening to Louis Armstrong, because every personality test that you can take, you know, get these bloody silly things like, what type of personality are you? What kind of person are you? I've done about 8 or 9 of those, always thinking maybe I'll get a different result this time. Like, you know, Ian, you are a world leader. Ian, you are a superstar. Ian, you are an actor, whatever. He says every single time, Ian, you are a campaigner. I've even tried giving different answers. It still comes up with the same result. And maybe that's where it comes from. And so that disc would remind me of many things. The message that my father gave me, and also very much of the influence that my father had on my life. And I think that's a beautiful place for me to end this Desert Island Discs. For all of you who have made it through both of these and made it this far, congratulations. And thank you very much for listening. I found this very difficult to do, and it took a lot of thought. And I guess I'm glad I've done it. I guess it's focused a lot of things in my life. And yeah, now back to normal podcasts. So there you go. I hope you enjoyed that. If there are any issues that you found particularly interesting, don't forget to contact me, and always go to ianbousfield.com for lots more interesting stuff.